Good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome. My name is Jamie McGeechan. I am the Events and Sponsorship Coordinator here at VOYCE, and I'm delighted that you can join us for this Community Education Series webinar. Protect your hard-earned assets, what you need to know to stay financially secure. Before we go any further, I'd just like to say a huge thank you to our sponsors for their support of the Community Education Series. If you've forgotten to opt into our sponsor prize drawing, it's not too late, there's still some time. Please email your name to events@voicestl.org to enter. Your information will be shared with our generous sponsors. Please do enter if you haven't already. We will be announcing the prize after our next education webinar in December. And on to our presenter for today. It's Lauree Peterson-Sakai, Senior Vice President, Aging Risk Strategy Leader at Wells Fargo, and our wonderful board chair at VOYCE. Hello, good afternoon, Lauree. It's so lovely to see you. How are you?
Hello, Jamie. Doing fine, doing fine. It's wonderful seeing you and everybody else.
Thank you so much. Well, we are absolutely delighted to have you present today. It's going to be an excellent session, and I'm just going to bring up your presentation slides. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful. And I'm just so excited to be here and to share some information with you all. I think part of what is so impactful, especially during the pandemic, is just realizing all the things that have been happening to our loved ones. And the more that we can focus on protecting those that we love and care about in ways that we can protect ourselves, I think the presentation today will really talk about those things that we need to have conversation. We need to make sure that we keep communication lines open, even when it's difficult, right? We know things are tough. So I'm going to share some stuff with you today that is impactful, not only to me personally, and I share personal stories, but what it is that we need to keep top of mind, not only with our spouses and our families and our loved ones, but people in our communities, and understanding those that are vulnerable, how we need to help them protect themselves. So part of what, if we can go to the next slide, Jamie, part of that is kind of like setting the table of what it is that we're going to be talking about today. And I love to share this wonderful quote from Sandra Day O'Connor, a Supreme Court Justice. "We don't accomplish anything in this world alone, and whatever happens is the result of the whole tapestry of one's life and the weavings of individual threads from one to another that create something." I think that part of what we here at VOYCE care about is each other, and what are those things that we can do to bring a voice to individuals that perhaps have been forgotten, or maybe it's something that we need to help, and help is in a variety of different ways. What I'm going to talk about today is really about elder fraud and things that happen that you need to think ahead of time, because as you're in that moment, it really, unfortunately, sometimes is too late. So we're going to talk about some things. We can go to the next slide. It really is going to set the table. So let's think about some of the stuff that we know that's happening out there in our aging communities. Someone's turning 50 every 8 seconds. The US population 65 and over is going to double within the next 25 years because of the aging baby boomer. And that's where I am, right? 1 out of every 5 citizens over 65 has been victimized. Women are nearly twice as likely to be a victim of a scam. When we think about these things, I want to have you look at your own life and why some of these facts would be important to you. Half of US women 75 and over live alone. That's 8.1 million women. I look at that stat and I thought about my mom, being married to my dad for 57 years. And when he passed away, her life completely changed. And what were some of those major moments that she needed assistance and needed help, right? But if you're alone, who is that? How do you provide those pieces of knowledge to someone as they get older to help protect themselves? And last, chances of developing Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia increase with age, 50% over the age of 60, 30% between 80 and 85. And if you're lucky to be over the age of 85 years old, you got a 50-50 shot of having some form of dementia. And if we aren't talking about these things, we're not gathering that information and those resources to help us plan and to help us protect, right? When I heard about Alzheimer's for the first time, heard about it, yes, but actually had to live it, was with my dad. And we were not prepared. And so I would just really ask everybody to think about these things as we go through the next slides, which we can move forward, Jamie. Part of it is to kind of set that table. So I'm just asking you to think about these things when you're talking, having conversation with your family or your spouse, or just when you're out, talking to friends. What period of time do they have their knowledge about whether it's protecting? Sometimes, in the old days, it was, make sure you don't have your checkbook out. Well, now there's not as many checkbooks. So what is that we need to help them get that new knowledge? Is it about social aware? Is it about how to protect your passcodes and things like that? So remember what time period they got their knowledge on how to protect themselves. We're hearing a lot of loss of independence is probably one of the biggest drivers of not getting that information, because their fear of losing control, whether it's driving, whether it's their independence, it's really that fear of loss. Impairments. I think part of us need to realize that just because you're getting older, maybe it's your eyesight, it's different types of things that you need to understand, mobility, pain. Those are the things that are happening that make people have decisions that they need to make. Another thing to think about is the concern about outliving your family, your friends, or your money. Family dynamics is another huge thing we need to think about, because as we all know, families can be wonderful, but there are times in our life that there are some challenges, and those do push on certain types of levers, both financial, mental, and in some cases, unfortunately, physically. The rise in the multi-generational households is up. There's 64 million and growing. Very excited to see how this is going to play out as we talk about aging. Environment changes, living arrangement changes. Here at VOYCE, we definitely look at long-term care and what that entails. So part of these things we need to think about as we're talking about protecting our assets, because how you want to live as you age is so, it's a major thought that needs to happen early, and it needs to be planned for. And as I mentioned, technology and social media, these are things that you need to understand. What is it that the individual that you're talking about, or yourself, how comfortable are you with these things? Because as they change, the opportunity for bad characters to insert themselves in your life become more apparent. We can go to the next slide. Now, one of the things that we want to talk about is the frauds and scams and abuse. And we could, this whole hour, I could talk about these. And so I don't want to just focus on frauds and scams and exploitation, but what I do need to kind of understand is the basis is somebody is trying in however way to manipulate a situation to have individuals lose their money, right? Whether it's through improper gifting, whether it's identity theft, there's all different types of ways, but there's some things that are out there, and you probably hear them on the internet and see them on the news, whether that's like the granny scam, where it's somebody picks up the phone and it's, grandma, I'm in jail, grandma, oh, help me. And the individual is thinking that's their grandson or daughter, and are thinking they're sending money to get them out of jail. This scam is happening over and over and over. And the more that we try to educate on those things, I think we really do need to just get the overall understanding is that there's bad characters out there, and how can we help provide other ways of getting that individual to either hang up the phone, don't answer the phone, make sure phone calls go to voicemail. If somebody is asking you for money, that there's things in places that they can go to talk to somebody to help. Some of the other scams out here, the jury duty scam here in St. Louis happened a few years ago, and that was really a scary one, because what that did is they found individuals through a data breach that they were calling them and telling these individuals that they had missed jury duty and that they were going to be taken to jail because it was a federal offense. And we had these people extremely upset and nervous, and they were told that if they just sent this check in the mail, that would cover the fee and they wouldn't go to jail. These are the kind of things that they take opportunities and find ways, whether it's the IRS, everybody's heard about the IRS or Social Security scams. But I think what you find is that individuals will take a situation, whether it's jury duty, IRS, it could be even a weather event, right? Where they take advantage of somebody to get hail damage done, or maybe it's during an event during the pandemic and saying, oh, we are giving money to this individual place, or GoFundMe account. So fraud and scams and abuse happen all over the place. Romance scam is one that I'm sure you've heard about. I mean, that has no age limit. We talk about, teenagers getting, or 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds getting catfish, thinking they've met somebody online. That is not just for the young. There are individuals, widows, that unfortunately are falling for this scam. And financially, they open themselves up to helping somebody, whether they don't have a job, or if they don't have a car. Part of the romance scam is allowing them to get in there and spend much time with them, whether it's on the phone or Skyping. It's that community of feeling that they are important to somebody, that they're loved. And then that opens that gate. And then unfortunately, in many times, the actual scam does happen. So I have a lot of other things here. Notice that I have isolation, because that is one of the things that gets exploited, is the individual themselves and what they are out there doing or not doing. If they're sitting at home and they're afraid to go out, then that opens them up to those phone calls, those romance scams, and there's a lot of different other things that are going on. So these is just a example of all the stuff out there that is, the possibilities unfortunately are endless, and there's different ways of these things. Notice I have family dynamics, the new best friend. They're all different ways of just getting into that person's life and figuring out how they can manipulate a situation for gain. And sometimes it's not just cash. Sometimes it's use of an apartment, maybe an open room, a car, their credit. So when you think of these scams, there's a multitude of different ways. You can go to the next slide. And I think that part of what, when we talk about, a loved one, how are you starting to see these things, right? If you don't live with somebody, 24/7, sometimes these type of things you're not going to see. But the key is to keep your mind open to the red flags that you can see. So sometimes, it's the reluctance to talk about financial matters. Maybe you had a relationship with your mom where, you were able to help her with her bills, and now she doesn't want you to help her with her bills. Possibly it's a spouse that has decided that he or she no longer is wanting you to know the budget, right? If there's unexplained withdrawals that are happening and you're just not understanding it. Bills not being paid, you go visit your loved one, and all of a sudden you're seeing, maybe it's all of a sudden or it's over time, you're starting to see the mail and unpaid bills starting to show up. I think abrupt changes, if somebody comes and you're hearing about them changing their power of attorney or their trust, that's usually a red flag. Something's going on. And if you haven't had that conversation about why those changes, you might need to get into having some more questions. Concern or confusion about somebody saying that there's missing money in their account. Maybe that's something that you're going to hear about from a loved one or a friend, right? I think when you look at people's access, if they're not being able for some reason to not have access to their credit card, their debit card, that is a question, because unless the person has some form of cognitive issue, that's their money. So we need to understand why they feel that they are not having access to those funds. Unusual expenditures, I would just say unusual is unusual for that person. Some people, maybe their routine is to go gambling. Maybe they go once a month to go play bingo with the church group. That's normal. But if you have somebody that normally has not done that, and now they're starting to go to the casinos, or you're starting to see a behavior that was not usual of what they were doing, that should raise a flag for you. That should say something is happening. Is someone in their life now asking them to start going to the casinos, to start doing things that was not their normal behavior. Now, things can happen. People can get new hobbies, and that is one of those things that's hard to kind of maneuver through. But you have a conversation about that. You start wondering and asking questions and caring about them, and you'll hear about those things. Purchases inconsistent with the elder's lifestyle. I mean, this is where if you're helping your mom, dad, and you're starting to see maybe some, I would just say maybe they're ordering things from an app that is not normal for you to see that type of activity. And so then that's going to ask another question. Hey, mom, dad, I didn't know that you were doing this. You need to ask questions, because possibly it's somebody that has either gotten access to an account, a credit card, or something. So we need to just make sure that it's something that fits in their lifestyle. We'll go to the next slide. Now, when we talk about money changes, we also need to think about social behavior red flags. What is it that could be happening in their life? If we talk about, new best friends, new sweethearts, that is something where somebody has come into their life possibly. And in some cases, it's absolutely great. There's no questions. But when you're talking about somebody that's possibly now starting to liquidate assets, or they're saying they're starting to, you're just seeing that maybe their family's being shunned and not taking part in some of their activities. That's where that isolation is starting to happen, where the individuals are starting to remove the loved one from some normal activity. And so things are changing. You can possibly hear them over the phone when you're talking to your loved one that might be living in another country or another part of the United States or something, that you're just hearing them over the phone. There's somebody kind of coaching them and asking for either money or how to do something, or that they want to give something to somebody. So part of this is heightening our communication skills to hear what's being said, not only by their actions, but also by actually physically listening to what's going on around them. The onset and worsening of illness and disability, unfortunately, this does create a sense of urgency for people. And sometimes they feel that they need to do something quickly, whether that's invest in something. It could be that they now believe that they need to liquidate out of everything and do something rash. So when people have illness or disability, you might see some changes happening to them. And that is one of those red flags. You need to have a conversation and figuring out where they are and what is it that they're trying to do. Relatives, unfortunately, I wish I could sit here and tell you that, family and friends are safe. Unfortunately, I can't say that. There are times that relatives can take advantage, and just like friends. So you need to just always make sure that if somebody is taking excessive interest, if they're not listening to the individual and being overbearing, that is a red flag. So you need to make sure that however it is appearing to you, if something makes you uncomfortable, realize that it's probably something we need to have a little bit of a conversation about. Behaviors with older individuals, and I would just say that individuals in general, I mean, I focus on aging and the vulnerable, but when behaviors change, that is a sign that we need to listen. We need to watch. We need to make an effort to understand what those are. If people are withdrawn or fear or submissive, if they're unkept, forgetfulness, changes in routines. These are behaviors that are just asking us as loving individuals to say, something's up. I need to have action. I need something to ask them, be able to understand what's happening in their life. The next slide, Jamie. So I think part of what we have to know is when we talk about abusers or fraudsters out there, who are they? And I've definitely have kind of given you a clue that family members are something that you need to watch out for, and also caregivers. Caregivers, unfortunately, there's bad people out there. But con artists, strangers, new sweethearts, all of these individuals have opportunity to do things and to create situations where fraud or exploitation can happen. And what's the commonality between the family, the caregivers, and the sweethearts is that they have gotten in there and they know the individuals what matters to them, right? They know that they care about their family, or they know they care about their church, or they know they care about animals. And part of what, or maybe they know they're lonely, right? They've seen them on Facebook, or they've had conversations, and they take advantage. And so I just would want everybody to understand that strangers, con artists, they happen for everybody. And all of this can happen to anybody at any age. But what really is essential when you have the vulnerable population is that their time to recover is less. So the important thing to remember is that if you see something and those interactions make you feel uncomfortable about what you see happening, that's the big thing. That's when we need to act. We'll go to the next slide. Now, when we talk about, why does, when we talk about fraud or exploitation or abuse, why is it not reported? And I think part of that is numerous, and part, we know they're embarrassed. We know that in some cases they can't believe it's happening, so they're not going to report or raise their hand up or go tell somebody because they can't believe it's actually happening. It's denial. It's how can somebody, my son or daughter, or, they love me, they would never do anything like that. But sometimes it's actual fear. They're fear of the perpetrator. They're fearful of the consequences. If I say that my daughter-in-law is, using my debit card all the time, do I say something? Who do I say it to? She's told me if I tell anybody, I won't be able to see my grandkids anymore. So there's a lot of different reasons why things happen and are stayed hidden. If you ever have a question or that feeling in your stomach that something's not right, I would just ask you to raise it up and think about it, and possibly you're the one that has seen enough pieces that have concern, right? We'll go to the next slide. So part of when we talk about, maybe people don't know what it is that they've seen, right? Maybe they didn't recognize the flags. Maybe they don't know who to contact. Maybe they don't know of the policy of wherever it is that you're, whether it's a family business, or maybe it's something to do with a company. Maybe they don't know what that policy is. Sometimes when we talk about bringing it up to a loved one, we're fearful because if we bring this subject up, that it's going to jeopardize the relationship and it's going to make it be uncomfortable. And I agree that is a valid concern. But I would just ask you, if you saw something and you didn't raise your hand and you didn't do something, what if that was your mom or dad or somebody that you loved and somebody didn't raise their hand or did not speak up, right? Not being somebody's responsibility, you have to look at yourself because we're in this together. And part of what I am advocating is that if something doesn't appear right, it's up to all of us to say something and to protect ourselves and our loved ones. We'll go to the next slide. So part of what I talk about is diminished capacity, because one of the things that when I go around the country and I talk about this, diminished capacity, forgetfulness, confusion, disorientation, difficulty with tasks, poor judgment, difficulty with the abstract concepts and difficulty with detecting fraud. They're so simple. But the key to why diminished capacity in this topic is so important is elder financial abuse often occurs in tandem with the client's diminished mental capacity. And so if we're not addressing somebody's capacity and their ability to understand and that they're vulnerable, we're missing a huge amount of signs. And I, for one, I will honestly tell you, I just shared with you, my dad passed away from Alzheimer's, and I was the daughter that didn't think my dad had any issue. And so it's easy to deny these things. It's easy to make excuses. It's easy to say, oh, he's just having a bad day. Or, he didn't have his hearing aids in. Or you don't want to see this. And so for a loved one, someone like myself, I'm the baby of the family. It took my sister to be able to say, you're not seeing what's right in front of you. And it took her to do some pretty drastic things to get me to see it. But I would just say to you that seeing it, if somebody else is seeing it, that's when they're taking advantage. And so you need to really step up our game on recognizing diminished capacity. And it's not always Alzheimer's. So let's look at the next slide. So part of what the key is that it could be something else. It could be that they're having a medication reaction. It could be that they have a health issue. Maybe they're not eating properly. They could have an infection that is clouding their memory. It could be depression, self-neglect, lack of sleep. There are so many different other reasons that have individuals that have diminish their cognitive abilities. So, it's not that I'm asking people to practice being doctors. That's not it. What I'm asking you to do is, if something does not appear right, don't just push it aside. Recognize that by talking about it and bringing it up, you're going to lessen the chances of outside people taking advantage of those pieces that make them vulnerable. Okay, so the next slide, we'll talk about, so when we talk about these things, I think being an advocate, promoting elder awareness is what's going to stop this fraud, is really going to make everybody aware what it is that we can do. We can look at interacting more with our seniors and our vulnerable population, connecting those dots. When you see those behaviors or those money things or the behavior things, connecting them. It's not just one thing that's going to happen. It's going to be 2 or 3 things that create a picture for you to say, you know what, there's something that needs to be done, because there's a pattern that is starting to appear. And maybe I'm the only one that's putting it together. But we need to do something, because it's not just the pattern of the others, because if we're looking at that, and if we are involved with those individuals, it's going to affect us too. So we need to understand what's out there. And so part of it is by asking what else is out there, what else concerns our elders and vulnerable having. And when I talk about vulnerable, this is anybody 18 and over that is a dependent adult. So when we talk about elder, I would also like you just to kind of think about the vulnerable, because the populations that we're talking about, those are the individuals that are being targeted. So report, escalate issues. If you see something, we got to say something, we got to do something, because too many times what we're seeing out there is that somebody thought about it, they knew something was up, but they just didn't know what to do. And I'm just here to say that's unless you're a police officer or adult protective services or ombudsman, that's their job. We need to give them that information so that they can do the investigation and the research. And our job is to protect ourselves. And I'm going to give some tips on that in a few minutes, but we need to be the eyes and ears. And I talk about our heart, to be open, to understand what it is that's happening to this population and seeing what we can do about it. Because the more that we can do it for ourselves and our loved ones, we are going to collectively be a better society for the vulnerable population. So we can talk about a little bit more, but really I'm asking people to be advocates, be elder aware, and what is it that we can do to help them in their future. We'll go to the next slide. So when we talk about the things, so what is it that we're doing, right? What is it that we can do? I mean, I'm a big proponent of family meetings. Talking about it when everything is fine is the way to go, because if you're waiting to the moment to have that family meeting when mom is in the hospital, I can tell you from my own experience, I lost my mom 3 months ago. That is not the time to be figuring out what mom wanted done. It's too late. It's already happening, right? You're in the midst of it. Emotions are, just high. And so I'm just telling you from my own experience twice now, actually 3 times if I count my mother-in-law. We've done it a couple of different ways. And this last time with my mom, we got it right. We all knew what she wanted. We had it planned. We had the documents ready. And that's the key, right? So what is it that you're doing in your life? Do you guys know? Do you have those health directives? Do you have the power of attorney? Have you, reviewed your trust? Living will, trusted contact, and guardianships. I mean, we're talking about people now. It's not just the older individuals that perhaps need that, but I'm talking about the 18-year-old that has autism. I'm talking about what is it that you have in place now for what's going to be happening in the future. We can't keep kicking that tough conversation down the road. We need to have them now. And we need to understand how to put those guardrails up and be able to say, when something goes sideways, what is it that I have in place that is going to protect me and my assets and my loved ones from those terrible things that we don't want to talk about, right? So it's those contingency plans. And I often say that, we are better at talking about, what to do in an earthquake or a fire, but, those may never happen to you as an individual. But guess what? We're all are going to get older. We all are going to have, if we're lucky, years and years of families and living to do. But there might be things that are happening, and that doesn't have an age limit. It could be somebody having a car accident when they're 40. It could be somebody living till they're 90. But things happen. And if we don't talk about it now, when everything is okay, the chances of it going the way you want it are slim, because you haven't told the people and given them the powers through documenting and having those conversations to have a successful outcome. So I would just say to you, part of what I'm hoping, talking to people around the country and with you, is to have those conversations and really have them. It's not a one and done, it's over time. It's something that you need to understand. Each person's different. Each person has their own life that has experiences. And as you get older, you have more. So it takes time to kind of vet that out and to have an understanding of what it is that they want to happen. And I can tell you, sitting here, that I know that we did everything that my mom wanted us to be able to do. And that is a wonderful place to be in right now. I have no regrets. And I would hope for all of you that when the time comes, that you yourself and your families can have that. Because it is a wonderful place to know that they really are, what their wishes are do matter. So we'll go to the next slide. And I think that part of what I'm hoping, this is my life, and I share it because part of what we all have is this scrapbook of life, right? When I talk about my mom, losing my mom, it was 2 years ago that she tandem jumped in Hawaii. So for me to tell you that my mom is no longer here, I had a mom that 2 years ago jumped out of a plane, right? I had a dad that all he cared about was his horses. And when you look at life, and whether, as I had said, we did not plan with my dad, unfortunately, but we planned with my mother-in-law. She was already on top of that, and we were able to do that with my mom. So part of when we talk about exploitation and we talk about cognitive impairment and diminished capacity and physical ailments, it's all part of that conversation. And I would just say, and at the bottom, I love to share my best friend's nephew is autistic, and he's on the spectrum. And one of the things when I go around the country and I talk about this, it's about him too, right? He's 19 now, or 18. He just turned 18, and his life now, he's in that space. And so when I talk about this, it's really about the vulnerable, the people out there that often get forgotten about. And we need to collectively all support how it is that we can help them protect themselves and how we can help protect them. And you see that I have 2 cats. So I got my kids, my kids are the cats. So it's really important that I make sure that my husband and I have ourselves together, because our cats aren't going to be there to take care of us. But everybody has something like this to be able to look at and understand who's important and why. We'll go to the next slide. So part of what I'm hopeful that this does is be able to share with you protecting those you love. This is a PDF that you can go out. We're going to share this booklet. It's really about having those conversations. And I think when we talk with them, whoever that is in your life, is to say, I care about you. Look at this great piece of information I have. Did you know? It's not telling them, I think you need this, because you're going to get negative responses, right? What you're trying to do is create a way to have conversation and open it up to say, here are some things that I'm doing. And I think it would be great if any of these are working for you, right? So it's about a way of starting conversation about protection and giving them information in a way that is palatable for them to understand how you want to help them and how you want to move forward with this. We'll go to the next slide. I think part of what my hope, these are 6 tips to help protect yourself and others, and they're very simple. bank account limits and activity alerts, very simple to do that, depending on what type of account you have, whether it's a mobile app or going to the bank. Sign up for those text and email notifications. Duplicate statements to a trusted person. That is something that is important if you believe that you don't want to give somebody access, but you want to say, if you see something, let me know. Many times this is really great for somebody that has perhaps a POA. You can give them a copy of your statement. Make sure you talk with your seniors and your loved ones about updating their computer and phone software, because I think a lot of times they think it's a one and done, and you need to just definitely help them from that technology perspective. And it's not just older people, younger people aren't so savvy at that either. So we just need to make sure that's out there. Social media awareness. I think if people were to just make an assumption that seniors and vulnerable are not out there, that's a misnomer. They are. They are in part of whether it's Facebook, whether it's texting, emailing, Twitter, they're out there. The difference is, are they as aware and savvy about what can happen, right? So part of the onus is, if we're asking our grandparents or whoever to Skype or to FaceTime or to WhatsApp, all those different types of things, are we also talking to them about what not to share, how to do things safely? So part of it, our ownership, we need to say, we're asking them to be in this space, and many are, but are we helping them do it safely? That is the key, right? So it's important that if you're asking, if you're in that sharing of information, of pictures and things, to make sure that, grandma, grandpa, whoever, that they understand the do's and don'ts of being out there in that space. And what are some of the possibilities, letting them know some of the downsides of what they're doing. And probably the biggest thing I can share is just keep those communication lines open, set those times so that you can visit. In person, I believe is the best, but with COVID and the pandemic, I know that's been hard. But really visiting, especially vulnerable individuals or elders, when you can physically see them in their environment and see what their day's like, who's calling, who's dropping by, looking at what their living arrangements look like, being able to just see their face is okay, but actually being part of their life for a day or two is something that's going to be really impactful. The holidays are always very tough from an emotional perspective, but I would just say that, scheduling out time, making sure that somebody is reached out to and talked to. I think I often talk about when people have children, they set up that calendar, who's going to bring meals or who's going to do this, or give the couple maybe a date night. I wish we had that kind of thought process when we talk about our seniors, because if collectively we put time on a calendar for grandkids to call or to send a card or to visit, we could spread that out over time, and it wouldn't be the onus of one person to be that key, person in that life, or maybe no one is doing that. So keep the communication lines open and be part of their life, because part of what is so amazing is their experiences and being able to have that understanding of what it is they bring to your life and to the life of our communities. So we need to help them. We need to share some tips with them, and understanding that many are tech savvy. I hate the thought that we think that they don't care about that. They do. Especially the traditionalists, they have gone through so much change and they accept change. It's amazing the amount of change that they have seen. But it's up to us to help them understand the negatives to it. And we probably see that a little bit better than they do, because, they come from a time, going back to that first slide, they come from a time period that, people would knock on their door to sell them, encyclopedias or a vacuum. So when we're talking about what their reference is, we need to share with them some of the negative. I don't scaring's not going to do it, but sharing with them why some of these tips will help them protect from some of the outside forces, bad forces. We'll go to the next slide. So here's some resources that I really like to share in regards to the Federal Trade Commission. It's called Pass It On. It's a wonderful way to share whether it's the scams or the frauds, but it talks about very simplified way of sharing that information. And it's amazing when I do a lot of YMCAs and a lot of senior centers around the country. And part of what is so great is if you get one positive experience, they share it. But if you get one negative experience, they share that too. So part of what we need to do is just give them information, and it does spread. So part of what we need to do is just give them information and allow them to send it to their people. So the National Center of Elder Abuse, the LGBTQ Prevention Center org is amazing information. The Elder Locator out there to help things to find things in your community. The National Association of Area Agencies on Aging. I've also put the Missouri Adult Protective Service Hotline and the Illinois Adult Protective Service Hotline. That falls right in. If you see something, say something, because that's what it's going to take. It's going to take all of us to do our part to change the trajectory of what this is, because I didn't put the numbers out here, but the numbers are astounding. And it's sad that that is what's happening. And as the population's getting older, it is unfortunately getting worse. So the way we can combat this is by all of us kind of, digging in there and saying that, I'm going to do my part, not only protecting myself and my loved ones, but being aware of what's happening. And I would just say that, all of this is great to talk about other people, but one of the things I know to be true is that if we make a change for those that are in this space now, we're going to be there someday. And if when we get older, if we've already set those things in place that protect and that do that, then we won't pass this on to the next, right? We're going to be able to do things that make a difference and advocate for a safer place for the vulnerable people in our lives, both from a monetary perspective, but also from an emotional perspective. I think, Jamie, that might be the last slide. I might have a thank you if the next one's thank you, maybe, I hope. If I did that right, yes. And I just want to say thank you, everybody, for listening and taking time to hear about this and know that we can make a difference in people's lives and our own. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for such an excellent presentation. Thank you so much, Lauree.
Welcome.
Thank you. I feel like I've learned a great deal over the course of the past hour. And if anything, a lot of it's really quite harrowing, the fact that, our most vulnerable in many ways in society would be the target of scams and illegitimate practices. It's awful, but thank goodness we have the ability to learn what we can do to combat some of these practices. I believe we may have some questions if you'd like to. Here we are. And yes, please, if you have questions, please do share them in the chat window or the Q&A. Please do share any questions you may have. Here we are, Q&A. Charlene was asking, where can we get the link to the Wells Fargo brochure? From Charlene Atkins.
I believe it is in that, it was a hyperlink, Jamie. I may have to get that actually the full link for you on that.
Absolutely. Can I ask, on your personal journey in the world of technology and using information technology, how quickly do you see the new practices of fraud, for instance, developing? How quickly are new dangers developing in information technology, and is it a constant battle to stay up to date and aware of these practices? I'm aware new malware, for instance, is being developed all the time.
Well, I think that the big thing too is to look at whether sign up for ARP has some wonderful information. The Better Business Bureau does. Part of it is realizing that the scammers, the bad people out there, as just as fast as we are building those safety nets and trying to they're just on that other side, trying to figure out how to bust through that too. So the key is to definitely keep your malware updated. Set those alerts up to notify you when there's been activity. I think there's a fine line between having too many notifications and then having the ones that actually work for you. So I think setting those limits so that institutions can call you, whether it's your credit card or your debit card, just making sure that you're aware of what's happening and who you're giving access to that information.
Absolutely.
So a lot of power we have a lot of power to stop that.
Yes, I mean, one thing that I was talking about with some family members recently was, even emails that do get into your actual inbox, they don't always get caught by, the junk folder. Sometimes more spurious communications do reach the inbox, and it is a bit of an ongoing challenge. I feel like a detective sometimes,
Right.
just trying to see what's legitimate and what's not.
Right.
I was wondering if you might have any advice about, email filters, or just how to be more forensic about the emails that we open.
Well, I think the first thing is that you don't click on something if you don't know, right? So unfortunately, clicking on something, whether it's on your phone or your emails, does create something. So that hovering over to see if where it actually came from, but that's very difficult too, because many of them have gotten to be so close to what it actually is. But I would just say that if you ever have a concern, just the best thing to do is not click on it, is to actually go to the site of who it is that you have that relationship with, whether it's a financial institution or a company. Trying just to click the other link that has gotten shot to you out of the blue is not the way to go.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that I've read quite frequently is most banks, I'm sure it's all of them, or financial institutions, they won't ask for personally identifiable information in an email that they send to you, no matter how legitimate it looks. They know, the bank would know who you are. They don't have to ask for you to send your data to them through an email. But these things can be so convincing.
Same thing with the government, right? So when we talk about the IRS or we talk about Social Security, same type of things. Those individuals already know that information. They don't need you to go back in and reset something up like that. And I would just say, make sure that you call the numbers that are provided on your actual statements, on the back of your cards. Unfortunately, there are people who are out there Googling, trying to find information. And sometimes that information is where the bad characters are sitting to get you to go there. So make sure you're using the correct contact information that you've been provided with through your organization that you're with.
Absolutely. And yes, even as someone who's been using the internet for going on 20 years, I realize myself, there's nothing to be embarrassed about when you're not sure if something's real or not, and it is better to speak to a trusted friend or family member if you're not sure. There's nothing to be embarrassed about ever if you're not sure if it's legitimate or not.
Better safe than sorry. I would rather somebody reach out and talk. We talked about the granny scam, and what we tell people is call your grandson. If he truly is, if a cop is calling you or a lawyer's calling you, telling that your grandson's in jail, pick up the phone, call the mom and dad, even though they tell you not to. Call the mom and dad, call your grandson, double check that, because that's how you're going to stop that from happening. Because that, if that scam were true, you were going to want to talk to the parents or somebody to be able to say, oh my goodness, they need help. So it's really going back to the source is the way to stop those things the best way.
Absolutely. And sometimes a simple phone call to a trusted friend or official can make all the difference.
Right.
I've got another question myself, because please do, if you've got any questions, please do share in the Q&A or chat window. Of course, one instance of fraud or impersonation can be devastating to one person. It can be devastating. But I was wondering, just how damaging is it to the economy, elder fraud? Is it a huge concern? Is it a growing concern? And has it been a growing concern through the pandemic?
Actually, yes, fraud scams have been going up. And part of that is the refund scam. You have a lot of seniors that are now ordering online. They're doing different things now. So it's exposing them to different types of frauds and scams. So the refund scam is definitely been on the increase. Unfortunately, you're having people that are isolated. So a lot of the romance scams are on an increase. So yes, we have seen a huge amount of fraud increase during the COVID time. And it's something that, we talk about. That's where you have to stay in touch, right? You need to make sure that they have somebody to call in case, they think they won the lottery or something. They can say, hey, I got an email or I got a phone call and I won the lottery. So you're going to be able to say, let's look at that. Did you play the lottery? Just ask some questions so that you can help them get to that place. And as I had mentioned earlier, part of what the concern is that you don't want to embarrass somebody. So how you want to talk about it in not a condescending manner. You want to be able to bring it up and say, oh my goodness, really? You want to be empathetic, and you want to be able to have a conversation so they don't shut down. That you can say, oh my goodness, what is it that we can do? Where are they telling you to go, right? I think I saw another question too pop up, James.
Yes.
But part of what the key is to be respectful and to understand what it appeared to them on that other side, and not making them feel that it only happened to them because they're old. Really, the reason it happened to them is probably because they have money. So whether it's income or Social Security, they've been targeted because of an opportunity that somebody has seen, because they are vulnerable, and that they are prime pickings, so to speak, for somebody to do that. So you need to be aware of how you're talking, because if you make it be that they're being silly, or how could they do that, they're not going to call you the next time to help them through that.
Absolutely. And nobody should ever have to feel foolish because they believe the best in people. No one should ever have to feel foolish because of that.
Exactly. And we have to remember, this group that we're talking about right now, the traditionalists, they lived in a world that was different than what it is today, unfortunately, right? The world is a different place. And there's great people out there, but there's also some bad people, and we need to weigh that. So understanding, you don't want to go through life thinking that you're a target and that you're a victim, because it's happening to many people. So the best we can do is have that education and help them protect themselves.
Exactly. Excellent advice. We've had a question from Dorothy Kranz, and Dorothy asks, what steps would a family member take in reporting another family member of elder fraud?
Okay, that's a tough one, but it's real. If you do believe that somebody in your family is exploiting another family member, the first thing to do would be to are you the only one that's seen it? Is it something that has been brought up, possibly to an attorney, if there's an attorney that's involved? Because many times, unfortunately, it has to be talked about in a very neutral conversation, because many times in families, and it's not even just wealthy families, there's a lot of different types of relationships that abuse or financial exploitation can happen just by somebody using mom and dad's car, right? So there's different types of what type of abuse is happening. So I would just say to Dorothy, part of what the hope is that there's somebody else in that family that can either have you understand what it is. But if you truly believe that there is financial exploitation happening, you can report, and that is going through the hotline. I would just say that families are probably the most difficult to not only uncover, but the emotion and the Now we have the different families, right? Stepchildren, second marriages. There's a lot of different nuances that happen. So depending on what kind of situation it is, I can't say, but the biggest thing is have somebody else in the family, that family meeting we were kind of talking about, start with that, and then kind of assess what's happening. Because many times what we're seeing out there, unfortunately, is maybe one child is taking care of a parent, maybe moved in, and as that starts happening, there you start seeing things happen, right? So the parent becomes more maybe over reliant on that one child later in their life. And so now things starting to get off balance. And that's where when you look at what do the legal documents say? Is there somebody that has power of attorney? Are they misusing the power of attorney? There's a lot of different things. And if those are the cases, then perhaps seeing an attorney is the way to go. So it's a hard thing, but the best thing to do is not just discount it, to bring it up as a family unit.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
And it is very difficult.
It must be an absolute minefield at times because of those family relationships and politics and all the rest. I mean, it must be very complex at times. With one more question, it's from Janine Larson. Janine asks, as a senior, I have observed that children expect their parents to be keeping up with the technical changes. After retirement, the elderly are not always aware of updates to technical skills. I think more of a comment.
Yeah, but it's true. And what I would just say is there's many organizations, Oasis and different organizations that are out there that have some of these technical classes that you can go to. If you go to Apple Store, if you go to some of the other phone app stores, they can actually help too. So it's something that I think we as a society need to be better at. I don't think we are teaching seniors as much as we should be on that technology side. I think we're doing a good job of just pushing information out, but we're not making it be more individualized of what the user is needing. And that is something that we as a collective need to be better at.
Absolutely, and it will be a continuing journey as technology changes. So there's plenty of scope for us all to be learning on our journey. But thanks so much for your time, Lauree Peterson-Sakai, for this excellent presentation this afternoon. I'm sure everyone will agree it's been wonderful, and we're all grateful to you. There will be a survey which will appear on screen at the end of the webinar. Please do share your feedback on today's session with us. It means so much to us to hear from our audience. And once again, thank you so much, Lauree Peterson-Sakai, Senior Vice President, Aging Risk Strategy Leader at Wells Fargo, and our VOYCE Board Chair. Thank you so very much for your time, Lauree.
Thank you, Jamie, and thank you, everybody.
Thanks so much. All the best. Thank you. To keep up to date, please visit our VOYCE website. It's voicestl.org. You will find details of our final education seminar for the year on the website, which is Managing COVID Survivors' Grief on December. And it's going to be an excellent session presented by Joan Sievert. You can register for that session on the VOYCE website at voicestl.org. Thanks again, and please do take care. All the very best. Thank you.